Hello Huntsville, it's MLK weekend and we have MLK history makers right here in Huntsville. Let's get things started by talking to Huntsville's favorite historian, Mr. William Hampton with Huntsville Revisited. So William, can you just kind of give us some historical context on Huntsville and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Well, there's quite a bit of connection between the two, Huntsville and Dr. King. Of course, his executive secretary for a number of years was a native of Huntsville, Alabama. Frances Sims is her name. She was actually the first person arrested during our 1962 sit-ins. Dr. King and a Huntsville native, Dr. Joseph Lowry, co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So that's another Huntsville connection. And then, of course, in 1962, local leaders brought Dr. King here to help with our issues and our struggles for civil rights and social justice. So he came in on March 19th, 1962, and spoke at various churches around town, and then at Oakwood College at the time, now university, and to unite the community, the civil rights workers here, as we tried to bring about change with segregation laws.
So William, what were some memorable visits that Dr. King made to Huntsville?
Well, of course, the most noted visit, there are no other documented visits other than the March 19th, 1962. Of course, Oakwood College is where the major gathering was.
Right.
And he actually gave little excerpts from what would become the I Have a Dream speech. So snippets of that were presented here in Huntsville on March 19th, 1962.
Wow, I had no idea, because you just think about the speech in Washington, and it's so cool that here in Huntsville, Alabama, part of that speech was given.
We have a connection to it.
That's wow.
I was a little boy when he came, so I don't have any personal memories of the Huntsville visit.
Right.
But from oral histories, one from Dr. Sonny Herford, he shares the story that Dr. King wanted to ride in his Cadillac convertible, and so they rode through Huntsville, through downtown Huntsville, so many of the citizens got a chance to see him.
Right.
And then, of course, there were threats on their lives. Dr. King and other workers, and the Gladys Jane Motel, which was the Negro colored hotel here in Huntsville at the time. So many of the civil rights workers stayed there, but then secretly they had chosen a home out in the historic Edmonton Heights neighborhood at the home of Reverend Ezekiel Bell. And so Dr. King stayed there, and of course citizens in the community stood guard, armed, to protect
him
through the night.
Wow, that's so cool to learn about, especially too, it's like you said, you were a little boy, but just to, be in Huntsville when he was here, that's a lot of people don't get to say that they had that opportunity, so that's awesome. So William, what is the local impact that Dr. King made on Huntsville?
Well, the leaders had gotten together to bring a powerful leader to Huntsville. Our local leaders got together to bring a local, someone on a national scale to just generate more enthusiasm. So the impact was, uniting the community and giving a shot in the arm. And what it did also was unite the community, as I stated, and then that gave us a charge, us as in Huntsville, a charge to go out, meet with city leaders, the mayor, the council members, to bring about change in public facilities, not just the schools, but public facilities, parks, the local city swimming pool, the local golf courses. And so many of the individuals who got involved were people like Mr. Rhett Woody, who owned Woody's Furniture Store and Woody's Drive-In Theater, where Lee High School sits now. But Mr. Woody and President Drake, this goes back a little bit to the 50s, so local leaders who were trying to bring about social change. Mr. Woody was an advocate for social justice, and he would actually fund the bail for many of the civil rights workers when they got arrested. Mr. Rhett Woody. So Dr. King's efforts gave a shot in the arm to local white citizens who wanted to get involved and be supportive of the cause. So many of them privately sent monies to bail people out of jail.
Right.
And Rhett Woody was one of those persons, a local businessman. In fact, his business was burned down by the Ku Klux Klan, his furniture store there. So also Dr. King gave a lot of life to young people.
Right.
Many of them were high school and college students from the local high schools and Alabama A&M, Oakwood students who got involved with this.
Right. So I'm so happy that you spoke about the young people, because that was going to lead me into my next question. Tell me how the younger generation in today's time can carry out the legacy that Dr. King left.
Young people today, just speak up. Stand for what's right. Use your vote. That was another whole issue. The voting privilege. Use your vote. Find out where politicians stand on issues. Go to conferences anytime they're speaking. Ask questions and support in that way. Definitely with the vote. Many young people need to realize the power of the vote. People marched, people lost their lives, people were jailed for that. So that's first and foremost how young people use the ballot.
So William, how does Huntsville celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day?
Huntsville celebrates in a number of ways. It's a day of service, first and foremost. So many churches have programs. There are civic organizations that have programs. There are soup kitchens. There's a big parade. And then there are other schools, organizations that have speeches, oratorical presentations. I know the Orion Amphitheater, they're having a program where Sonny Herford IV is coming to share his civil rights story. So I'm excited to see that, of course, the city, the city of Huntsville, not just its organizations and its citizens are doing things, but the city of Huntsville, is doing things to promote the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
So what are some key integration goals and efforts that Dr. King and local activists in Huntsville worked towards during the civil rights movement?
Well, key integration goals were, first and foremost, access to public facilities, restaurants, hotels, and then of course schools. Several school systems around the country had already integrated, and so that was one of the primary things here in Huntsville, was to integrate our public school system. So Dr. King coming to town, just gave a shot in the arm and gave the community some enthusiasm to usher this next chapter in Huntsville's history in. So civic leaders like Max Luther. So prior to Dr. King coming in 1962, he had been in communication with other civic leaders here.
Right.
And so the integration of our municipal golf course, a lot of this, some of that foundation was laid by folks who had been in communication with Dr. King. Local leaders here were encouraged that Huntsville would one day, change its policies. And in Dr. Sonny Herford's documentary, he says he believes in Huntsville.
Right.
And we want to today, you had asked a question also about the young people.
Right.
Gotta get them believing in Huntsville, believing in positive change, and it can happen.
Yes, it can. Well, that's incredible. William, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so nice to meet you, and today was so educational and inspirational for myself, so we're very thankful for this.
I'm honored. Thank you.
They pulled up to the window and they were just stopping on the campus to with their megaphones to say stuff. And so when he stopped, he had the megaphone and he said, "I know that you all think that you're doing the right thing, going to school, of course. But you need to know that Dr. King got a doctorate degree, but he cannot go over to Walgreens and eat a hamburger. What good is the degree?" So it made sense to me. And they said, okay, just so that we can show evidence and all of whatever they say, they said, we're gonna go down and sit in at the Walgreens restaurant tomorrow morning. Meet us downtown at 9. I couldn't wait. I got right on in the line and went on down there, and just as innocent as I could be. I didn't even know anything about arrest, possible, none of that. I just went down, sat down. I was just silly and everything. Like, may I have a hamburger? You know, all the silly stuff that you would do at that time. And the man I remember him very well. I don't remember his name now, but he was a very rude manager. And just said a lot of vile stuff to us and stuff. They tried to spray insect spray on us and just real humiliating stuff. And so then that was to make us move, but I am a stubborn Capricorn born on Christmas Day. I ain't going nowhere, ask Jesus. So I didn't move, and they arrested me. And after that, I got arrested, and I don't even know how many times. I became very popular. The Sims girls getting arrested was just, I became meat on the bone. So after I was put out of school, because you cannot keep getting arrested and they'll let you stay in school, I became the secretary for the movement there. And we did it for 2 years, from 62 to 64.
Now, this was the movement in Huntsville. Okay, who were you the secretary for?
I was the secretary for the Community Service Committee. Okay. And that was comprised of John Cashin, Joan Cashin, Sonny Hereford, Dr. Snodgrass, Reverend Snodgrass, who was my minister.
Right.
He was in that, and other ministers around and people, Reverend, just a lot of people. It comprised of this committee, and it was maybe 25 to 30 people that became the group that got us out of jail, who formed just got the whole process together for us.
The civil rights activism in Huntsville.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and it worked. We were successful. And Randy Blackwell, who had been my advisor in college, who is an attorney, became the program director for Martin Luther King in Atlanta, and called me because he knew of my notoriety in Huntsville, and asked me and said that Dr. King had wanted me to come to be his secretary there, and asked him if I would do it, and I said yes, and I went.
I recall this in a number of instances where he talked about the first time his biological father, of course, who took him to a banquet. And Dr. King spoke at the banquet, delivering a message on the blueprint for life. There were just a few houses down. Dad would actually mow the lawn for Dr. King and his family there at the parsonage. Some things that people may not know about Dad. Dad was an AME pastor for a number of years, 40 years at St. John, but prior to that, a number of other churches in the Birmingham area. But Dad modeled himself, I would say, even more so after and I hate to be a play on words, but he modeled himself after the King. And that's what I think really truly makes the difference, knowing that, okay, well, we do have, and we were blessed to have Dr. King here on earth. Dr. King was sort of this conduit, if you will, to helping us become, to get equality here on earth, but at the same time, Dad had his faith not only in what Dr. King stood and led for, but he also had his feet grounded in the King.